Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you, and today we have the Kershaw AM4. Now this is a collaboration with Almar knives. If I flip it over, you can see the Almar logo right there. The way this is constructed is G10 on one side and stainless steel on the other. I really like this construction. The polished G10 is really nice, and the black coated stainless steel looks pretty good as well. Now it's suspect with a bit of wear that'll start to show, and some of that stainless steel will start to show through, but for a knife at this price point, I don't really think we can complain too much about that. Now let me say this is kind of in keeping with what Kershaw likes to do. They've done collaborations with, of course, Ken Onion, but Hinderer, GTC, Emerson, and now Almar, and I'm sure we could name some others, but we won't get into too much there, other than to say that this is a pretty interesting design. I really like what they've done with this. It's just a very simple handle. It's nicely contoured, both the G10 and the stainless steel. And so I've got to say right off the bat, I find this particular design extremely compelling. I love the slimness of it. I love the look of the polished G10. I love the red accents in the back and the little Almar symbol over there. Everything about the design of this knife is really well done. Now I will say there are some issues that I have with how they've executed it, but I hope that Kershaw actually keeps this up. Now, that may sound a little silly when I say I don't like the way it's executed, but I hope, and here's why. There are things on this knife that I think are a bit of a miss, and we'll go into those details, but it's really close, okay? This knife is, within a hair's breadth of me just singing its praises, and I really want to, but there are a couple things holding me back. So let me go ahead and start getting into the details about this, some of which I really like, some of which I'm going to complain about a bit, but let's go ahead and get into it. Overall, this guy is 7¾ inches. Now it's actually just a little less than that. And you guys know I like an 8-inch knife. And that's the first thing that I want to say about this. If this knife was bigger, if this was more like the CQC 4K, I think it would be ideal. A couple of the things that are issues are largely issues because of the shrunk down size. If you had just a little bit more real estate to work with, a lot of the issues on this knife would go away. So I really hope they do like an AM6 or something that is this exact design, only larger, okay? And I'll talk about some of those specific things as we go through, okay? But 3.5-inch blade, while we're still on specs, 4¼ inch handle. So that's quite a small handle, and that is one of my issues with this knife is in hand, it's a little too thin. It's not quite hand filling enough to give me confidence to try and do any kind of heavier, harder cutting task with it. Now it's very lightweight because of the construction, 3.1 ounces, and that's one thing I've got to really give Kershaw credit for. I love the G10 side alone. G10 is a very strong material, and the way they've done it by using just G10 on one side and then the stainless steel on the other cuts down on a lot of weight, and I really like that choice. So this knife is very small, very lightweight, carries really nicely. It's, when you get a knife that's really nice and smooth, that's really slim, I think you can see how this knife in your pocket doesn't have much of a profile. So that aspect of it is really pleasant. And I will say I have used this, even though, as I say, I don't love everything about it. One thing I really like is how easy and slight it is to carry. You're still getting that 3.5-inch blade, which is something I really like, even though the knife is quite small. So that is definitely a positive for me. And so in terms of size and weight, it's too small, but that small size does make it carry nicely. Now, let's be honest, because of the construction of this and the very slender sort of design of it, if everything were just 10% or 15% bigger, it would still be very lightweight. It would still be very comfortable in pocket, but a lot of the issues that I'm going to talk about would go away, and so that would be a real win. So first off, size and weight, not bad. It's a little too small for my preferences, although I know it's big enough for some people, but even for people who like a smaller knife, I think you'll find that the slimness here is so small that it's like trying to grip a pencil. If you try to, here's a pen that's quite small, and to try and get a really strong grip on this, it's hard to do because your hand doesn't want to close over something quite that small. Okay, so Size and weight, very small, or I guess nice size blade for the size of knife that it is, but a little too small for me to feel really confident with. Let's now talk about the blade. Again, the blade design itself is not something I have any complaints about. We've got a drop, well, really I guess this is a spear point with a hollow grind. It's HCR13 MOV. They have written you a little bit of a book on the side of the blade there, which, let's see if I can get that to focus and you can read it. There we go. You can see the model number, Kai patent, Almar design, HCR13 MOV. I don't mind this blade design at all. In fact, I kind of like it. Again, I'm really impressed that you're getting, 3.5 inches of blade in a very small knife. It is hollow grind, which makes it fairly thin behind the edge. The only, the grind itself is quite low. So notice there's only this much of the blade that's ground. It would have probably been nice to see this a little higher, but it definitely works. And I've used this for a bunch of tasks, cutting fruit and cheese and all kinds of other things. And it doesn't hurt it that much because the blade stock is so thin. Okay, so this still ends up slicing really well, even though the grind is a bit abrupt because of the fact that the material is not overly thick to begin with. Okay, so kind of there's some forgiveness there, if you will. Overall, I definitely like the blade. I have no issue with it. Again, I wish it were a little larger, but I do have to give them some credit for getting quite a bit of blade packed into this handle. Let's go ahead now and talk about lockup and deployment. This is a speed safe knife, and I like speed safe. I've gone on record lots of times as saying that. I love the fact that, see, all through this range, there's no spring tension. So I can close the knife to here, I can get my fingers out of the way, and I can close the knife the rest of the way. So the speed safe does function really, really nicely, and it is one of my favorite options for an assisted knife. Okay, and this knife, by the way, the speed is quite abrupt on it. So look how, it does come out of there with some authority. And so I just demonstrate that to point out that you don't lose anything in terms of speed or how hard it flicks out by going with the speed safe. All right, now, this knife, the way the lockup and deployment is, it's a stainless steel frame lock. You can see the lockup there is a little late, and that's one of the problems. It is a little tough to get a hold of this lock. You sort of have to push your thumb in there. It's not super comfortable. The other issue that I have that's not super comfortable is the flipper. The detent is adequately stiff, which is nice, but the flipper is, like many knives, it's kind of sharp right here, and in order to deploy it, you pretty much have to put your finger on that sharp point, and it gets a little uncomfortable with repeated flips. Okay, in fact, 2 or 3, and you can already start to notice it. The other thing to point out here is you've got these thumb studs that are unusable. Okay, I have tried and tried and tried. I'm seeing even on video here, I'm trying to give it one more chance. I cannot use these thumb studs at all. Maybe you could get like a nail behind there or something and flick it out. I don't know, but my fingers will not fit in behind those thumb studs, which is kind of annoying. And I feel like, then why include them? They should have just been left off. Okay. Now again, that's one of those points where if this knife were a little larger, that would allow a little more space in here, and the thumb studs would probably work fine. Okay. The washers, take a look in there. You can see the phosphor bronze washers in there, and they work quite well. Now, the only way you can kind of test that is you can sort of feel the action through this portion, and it's fine. Now, one nice thing I guess about speed safe is you're always going to get a pretty firm deployment when you're using a speed safe knife. So there is that aspect to this. What do I think about lockup and deployment? Well, yeah, there's a couple issues. The lock is hard to actuate. The flipper is uncomfortable. It does flip out well, but I've got one more complaint to issue here, and that is if you look back here, notice how very, very small those phosphor bronze washers are. If you look at the screw here, the washers are hardly any bigger than the screw. Okay, now the problem with that is it means that you don't have a lot of lateral rigidity, and there's no blade play in this knife, but there's definitely some flex, and it's just caused by the fact that those washers are so small. Blade play I consider where you can feel the tick tick tick. Here, although there's no blade play, I can get that blade to move a little bit, And it's because, you know, imagine building a tower, but you're going to put your tower on a really small base. No, you want the widest base possible. And that's what you want in here. You want the widest washer possible to give you a little more stability there. And they've opted for a really small one, which is kind of a fail, especially in something that's so easy to get right. You know, it's just put a big enough washer in. It's not that difficult. I suppose if the lock was going to interfere, which it kind of does, they could have at least gone with a large washer on one side. Okay, so that's another issue that I have. Now, overall, it's not the end of the world, and I can't say that I hate this knife. I can't say that the action is terrible, and I can't say that it's not functional, because as you can see, it definitely does what it's supposed to do. It's more a question of doing it well. Okay, so this is a really cool design, and I really wanted it to work exceptionally instead of just you know, instead of just barely being able to say, yeah, it does work. And of course the thumb studs, that's a fail. They don't work at all. Okay, so a few issues there on lockup and deployment. Now, let's talk about handle construction, because we're back to something now that the knife has done really, really well. You've got contoured, polished G10 that's really, really attractive and really, really comfortable in hand. This knife is great in terms of the choices they made around construction. On this side, we've got stainless steel frame. And again, I have no issue with this. Painted black, of course, that's more in keeping with the Almar design, which is totally fine. The nice red standoffs there, and again, I prefer standoff construction, so really all of that is very well done. Even the pocket clip, the way they've done just a bent over clip, I find it goes in and out of pocket really nicely. And of course, being smooth and small as it is, this knife really disappears into your pocket. So from that aspect, again, I really, really like all of the things they've done here. And that's why this knife is frustrating to me a little bit, because I love what they did with the handle, and largely I bought it just to try that out. And I've got to say, you know, it's great. If it was just a fraction larger, you know, if my hand was kind of out here instead of back here where it is, you know, and again, look at the knife. It's really, really attractive in terms of its design. So, all of those things, you know, as I say, this handle is really, really nicely executed. And I really hope, okay, that Kershaw, you know, doesn't just abandon this design, doesn't abandon the partnership between them and Almar, because this design would be spectacular in a knife that was about, you know, that had a full 4-inch blade and was just, you know, a little bit bigger all the way around. Okay, a little longer handle, a little thicker handle, a little taller in the blade there. If everything was just, you know, if you just shot this with a ray that would just grow everything a little bit, I think it would work really, really well. Of course, you'd still then have to drop the thumb studs, which would be fine. Okay, so the biggest wins on this are the overall design. I really like the way it looks, and the handle itself. I love the handle construction on this guy, and I hope to see some more options like this from Kershaw, because it is really well done in that respect. Let's go ahead and get to some comparisons. I've got the steel wheel cut jack here, which is, you know, a smaller flipper. Now, a little bit more money. I think these guys are pretty cheap, I will say that. So they also have that going for them. I think they go for, you know, maybe under $30 is what I'm kind of thinking right now. Anyway, pretty budget friendly. Now here's another budget friendly here's another budget friendly lightweight flipper. Now this is, I've got to say, you know, if you're looking at this, you probably should go this route. Everything about this is better. The ergonomics are better. The blade is better. The steel is better. The size is better. You know, there's not much about this knife that I would say other than guys, the contoured G10 and the stainless steel. But this is a great knife, and what you're looking for is just a good utility lightweight folder, this is obviously the way to go. But again, this does not have the same design elegance as this knife, I don't think. So there is that. Let's grab a pair of two. Obviously the pair of two is quite a bit bigger. Now obviously, you know, the weak point on the pair of two is always blade length. So you're actually getting more cutting edge. Imagine this, you've got this little tiny knife, more cutting edge than the pair of two. And so yeah, That is a complaint that many people have pointed out with the Para 2. What else have we got here? American Lawman. Obviously much more expensive, but I'm thinking, you know, it's a smaller knife, but still very, very capable. And this also demonstrates, you know, if you're doing a small knife, a little bit wider handle does add some comfort. Now here, next is a similar size flipper design, very thick in handle though. That's of course the Lion Steel. By the way, I'm still trying to sell this, so if you're looking to buy a Kerr, go ahead and get in touch with me. Anyway, moving on, here is, oh, hopefully I don't fail to do this on camera. Of course I'm going to. Sorry about that. Here is the Rake P831. Again, probably closer in price point to this guy. There are a number of rake knives out there. I think, don't I have one here? Oh yeah, here we go. Here's another rake knife. Both of these would be similar in price, but a considerable step up in utility and even in quality. Okay, this is of course, this is the 831, and this is the 105Q, P105Q. What else have we got for you? Oh, one more. Let's throw the Real Steel 802 Horus in here as well as another. Now these are going to be more expensive than this, but it's still a pretty budget-friendly knife and demonstrates what you can do for a reasonable price point. Okay, so there's some comparisons for you, and I hate to pick on this knife, guys, but pretty much any one of those I would take over this. Just because of those few things that I pointed out, especially pertaining to the lockup deployment. The overall action area really needs to be looked at. Okay, so Kershaw, if you're watching this, a couple of slight tweaks, but you've got a great design here. It's a gorgeous looking knife. It's got some stuff like the polished G10 that you're not used to seeing in budget knives, some really nice decorative standoffs there. Very, very cool design, just not implemented all that well. So overall, that's my take on this knife. It is a great design. I love the way it looks. I love the shape overall. I love the clip. I love the construction. The price is wonderful. It's very easy to carry. So there's lots about this that's good, but then the stuff that's bad is the design. That just they took that design and maybe didn't realize its full potential, because this knife is very small. Pretty tight, you know, a little tough to actuate the lock bar there, uncomfortable flipper, unusable thumb studs, and so those things kind of put me off a little. All right, thanks for watching, guys. We will talk to you soon.